pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Hurley?
Here.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Here.
Chair Lowry?
Here.
We do not have a quorum.
Okay, so I over-prepared, I suppose. I thought we were going to have a quorum, but now I recall that we weren't. So I guess my question to any of you folks out there, I don't know if you're notified or not, or is anybody here on an action item? So, oh, Brandon, you're here. Okay, so they've all been called off, I guess. Is that right? Okay, excellent. Now I'm prepared for the next meeting. So, okay, so that was the first thing I wanted to do. All right, so next we have approval of the agenda, excuse me, of the agenda. So we know that action items 4, A, B, C, and D are not going to be heard today because we do not have a quorum. And so does anybody have any items they'd like to add for discussion?
I'd like to add an update from the Gulf Beaches Museum for information items.
Okay, so for information, I will make that 6D, Gulf Beaches Museum. Anything else? Anything from staff?
Yes, Chair Lowry. With that, we would like to add city-owned resources for an informational item. So I believe that would be 6E,
Okay,
as well as item 5A, or I'm sorry, 5C Design Guidebook. Being that we do not have a quorum today,
yep.
we are requesting either to continue that to our January meeting or to the very end of everything, and so we can get through our informational and discussion items.
Okay, well, let's see, I don't have a problem with either one of those.
Okay.
Let's see where we are, and then also, I would say this, though, that on that purpose, there's just a couple kind of typo things we might be able to mention today, just for
Okay.
the next one, okay?
Sure.
All right. Okay, does anybody have a motion for approving the agenda?
So we can't take any action.
So we can't approve the agenda either.
Right, but
Okay,
You can do
then
it by
we'll pass that to
consensus.
next month where we can look at the minutes from,
yes.
wait a minute.
That's right, we can't approve last month's minutes either.
Yes, I understand that. Okay, so procedurally, since we aren't approving the agenda, it's just a discussion item, so we can go forward, I'm sure. Okay,
We can swear in anyone who's making testimony or giving information today.
thank you.
That's not necessarily necessary just because we don't have any hearings.
We can't
because
vote on
there's-
anything.
Right, because there's no action items. We don't necessarily need to do that. We do still need to do audience comments, though.
Yeah, that's fine, okay. All right, then. Then we will move to audience comments. Is there anybody here that wants to speak to anything that's on the agenda? If you want to speak about something specifically, which I'm sure some of you do, we can wait until that actual item comes up and you can speak at that time. But this is the appropriate time if anybody has any general comments that they'd like to make at this point. Does anybody have any general comments? Okay, no. So we'll move along. So we've gone through subsection 3 because we can't vote on that. We're at subsection 5, discussion items. 5A is the design review, number 25144, the residence at 2604 Paso Girl Way. Hello, Mr. Berry.
Hi there, Brandon Berry, planner. If we could get the PowerPoint pulled up. So this is a design review of a new residence at 2604 Paso Girl Way. It is case number 25144, Sam Angelides for Kevin and Lois Quinn. And this is a new house medium structure located on the property. You can see the site plan here. This was moved on to design review because the lot is undersized for the zoning district. The Land Development Code requires that any lot that is undersized for the underlying zoning district in Paso Girl be brought forward for design review. The pending changes to the overlay would require all properties, all new developments to be brought forward for design review, but this is applicable in the subject case. So you can see the site plan here. The setbacks for the house medium building type are met. The applicant has also met the frontage landscaping requirements. You can see the elevations of the structure here. That's the front looking from Paso Grill Way as well as the south elevation. This was not originally designed to the overlay. We have worked with the applicant for a number of revisions, and we feel that it has generally been brought into compliance with the design requirements for the overlay. They have added the porch roof to the front. They've made a few modifications to the exterior cladding of the structure. They've continued the lap siding down to the ground floor level. They've added the windows with shutters that you see on the opposite sides of the porch as well. And we do believe that the structure has generally been brought in line with the design requirements. I have a few comments and a few slides just to wrap up the requirements. And then you can see the west elevation looking from the alleyway. Access will remain only from the alley for this property. And then you can see the north elevation as well. They do have a deck that slightly cantilevers off the side of the structure. It will meet the eave line, and it appears to meet the setbacks. I have asked for them to provide that in a revised plan. You can see the floor plans here as well, 2.5-story home. Staff had the following comments. The rendering shows stucco siding at the ground floor. I believe that was a remnant from an earlier version of this. The elevation does show the lap siding. We had preferred the lap siding. I believe that's a change that they've committed to. I just want to get that confirmed by the applicant. We've also asked for the clear height distance, the width and depth of the porch on the plans to show that the frontage dimensional requirements are met. The Land Development Code does require a certain height, depth, and width to the porch feature. And then, as I mentioned before, we just asked for the side setback of the upper deck to ensure that the house medium 5-foot side setback is met. As always, the board can make any comments to ensure compatibility of the structure within the district. This is a single-family use. There are no other form or mass limitations other than the ones that we just discussed. Happy to take any comments. We also have the applicant present.
Yes, to go back, just one slide there. You mentioned that you have to get some confirmation on something.
Yes, I believe the applicant has committed to providing the lap siding on the ground floor as well. The rendering just showed what appeared to be stucco. I believe that was just a leftover from when it was prepared, but I just want to confirm that.
And so do you need testimony from that today?
If the applicant can just
Okay,
confirm that,
and
yeah.
do we have to swear in for that purpose?
That's up to you.
Okay.
If you want it to be
No, I'm
sworn
not worried about
testimony versus just being on the record.
Yes, okay, that's fine. Where's the applicant? You understand where we're at right now on that question? Could you just step forward and state your name for the record and answer that question for us? All right.
Sam Angelides Jr.
Okay.
Yes, we intend to use lap siding on
Okay.
the first level, and then we're working with the architect on all the dimensions being met.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any board members have any questions for any of these people that are here or for Mr. Berry?
I don't have a question, but I have a couple of comments. Thank you for the Key West style. Thank you for the driveways and garages on the back off the alleyway. It looks great.
Yes, also along that line, I think in the drawings there, the ground level in the front, you've added shutters, I guess, on it that make it appear to be an actual living space, and I think that's a great little touch too. So all in all, it's a nice design. I was trying to think, so that's an empty lot right now, right?
Yeah, we demolished the house in July.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one was there. And this is just for curiosity. These owners, they also own another house, don't they didn't they own a house down there between 25th and 24th and 25th?
They haven't brought that to my attention. I don't.
Oh, maybe they didn't. I thought that, and I think you might have been involved with that other group, so I'm just probably off on that. Okay, anything?
No.
Okay, it's a great design, more power to you, and thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Okay, 5B, design review, number 25145 for the lot, or the house at 404 and the lot at 406 Paso Grill Way. Brandon?
We could pull the PowerPoint up, please. So this is a new request. However, the board did see a similar request for this property back in 2021, I believe. This is an extension of an existing home. You have an existing 3-story structure on the southern lot. There is an addition, 2-story addition proposed to extend onto the northern lot of 406 Paso Grill Way. The applicant owner is Sean Maroney of Maroney Design for Stephen and Cynthia Keratin. This is a 2-property lot. They will be combined under the zoning regulations moving forward once this project is undertaken. This is a design review for a 2-story addition on the northern side of the existing 3-story residence. This would be subject to the house large building type. Currently at the lot size of the residence at 404, it is subject to the house medium building type, and I'll get into detail on that in just a moment. So here's a proposed site plan. The area in red is the addition. The gray area to the south of that is the existing structure to remain. There is a porch on the front that is also proposed to remain. You can see the side setback there. Under the current lot dimensions, the structure would meet the required setback. With this moving over to the house large design, the setback increases by about 2 feet, and the future setback for any additions made to this residence would need to meet that 7-foot setback on both the north and the south sides. It does meet on the north. The south is an existing grandfathered condition. It doesn't need to be brought into compliance under this project, but any future additions, any future redevelopment would be subject to that 7-foot south setback. You can see the structure here existing. You can see on the top the rendering, the 2025 plan, that's what's under review today. 2021 plan was similar. You had the non-habitable storage parking space down at the ground level and a living level recess beyond the pool deck, which will face the frontage of the property along Paso Grill Way. That had come forward to the board for acceptance back in 2021. You can see the proposed front and rear elevations. As I mentioned, there will be an infinity pool deck feature at the front of the residence. They are continuing the archway and the column design, both at the ground level and at the upper level. They're extending out the shake siding cladding, and as well as the railing features as well on the residence, and then the rear of the residence aligns as well. I can see here the floor plans, as I mentioned before. The ground floor will be used for storage. In the new addition, it is used currently for storage and garage space in the existing residence. The kitchen, I believe, is being moved on the existing first living level, being relocated to the rear of the new balcony and pool deck space with pool in the new addition. Staff had minimal comments. Our one comment from our design reviewer was that the blank wall facade beneath the infinity pool edge should be better integrated with the upper story through similar siding material, arch-like treatment, or other visual reference. Not necessarily continuing this shake siding because it isn't a feature that is shown on the ground level extension, but some kind of architectural treatment that references the upper living level, as was mentioned by the board with the prior case. We do like treatment that makes it appear that the ground floor is a living level despite it being non-habitable space. I did speak with the architect in advance of this discussion, and they did agree to provide some kind of treatment to that space. As far as the zoning is concerned, it's just the point that I brought up previously. In the expansion of this lot, the future setbacks will increase from 5 feet to 7 feet. They are meeting that for the addition. They're not seeking any kind of variances or waivers, but any kind of future development, especially on the south side of the lot, will need to comply with that new 7-foot required side setback. As with the other design, this is an addition, but it is subject to the overlay, so it's subject to the same design review criteria. It is a single-family use currently and will remain, so there are no form and mass limitations other than those required. We are happy to hear any comments from the board on this design.
Okay, let me ask, can you go back to the design itself before that even? Sorry. Keep going forward.
Comments?
Back one? All right. Okay, so, but first let me ask you this, and I think I know the answer, but we don't get a lot of these situations. And first, let me just say, I think it's really great, and it looks fabulous, and I think it'll be a really good addition to Paso Grill. The combination of lots, so right now it's not combined, correct?
Correct.
And that's fine, I mean, and so this is a typical procedure. They would go ahead and do the plans and then later go to get the lots combined. And as of the moment, what is the procedure for combining lots? Does that have to go in front of somebody It does, doesn't it? But
So current procedure is to take them forward to City Commission after review by the Historic Preservation Board. They had gone through that process back in 2021, and this
Right.
is a similar project. So, but any new request to combine properties or separate properties would be reviewed by this board and then the
Okay, so-
commission.
So in this case, they don't have to come back in front of us because we've already,
Correct.
even though they changed the plan slightly, but then that'll have to go in front of the city commission.
Not in this specific case because they had gone back in 2021 for the lot
Got it From
combination.
the commission then.
We had gone through that process back then, but any other development of this type would be required to
Gotcha,
do that.
gotcha,
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then the other question I have, along that same line, doesn't apply to this particular case, but what's the status of where we are right now if someone wants to split lots?
That's the same process. Any lot split in Pass or Grill needs to come to the Historic Preservation Board, and then the City Commission takes action.
And is that for the entire historic district? Is there any areas that are not subject to that?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Well, so within the Pass or Grill overlay district specifically, we're adding that into the 8th Avenue zoning. That'll be part of the new amendments, but Pass or Grill
That
overlay.
was my clarification.
Right.
So the areas that are now zoned whatever /ROR, it applies, but the ones, some of the commercial areas, the CRD, that we don't have that yet. We're
Correct.
adding that. Okay,
Yes.
that's more for future use. Okay. And now about this. So the addition, which is essentially 2 stories, right? I mean, including the ground floor. They aren't adding any bedrooms or anything like that over there on what I'm going to call the pool house or whatever. It's just more for kitchen and dining and stuff like that. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes.
I'm going to nod back there. That's what I thought. Okay. And right now on the ground floor, I guess do we have garages in the back or not? I can't read that sometimes.
So the existing residence is used for garage and storage. That's on the
Gotcha.
left side of the screen.
Yes.
The new space will be unfinished storage in the front there.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Anybody have any questions for Brandon or for Mr. Roney or Ms. Curican? I think are both here. Okay, well,
I just see where the main, like where the dining area, the main living area is connected to the new section. That's a requirement for the addition, right? The living spaces have to be connected by living space and
That
not
is
just
correct.
a walkway. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
I think it's great, and I love the way you've continued the, I may say the wrong word, colonnades and the railings and everything to make it look that and set that back, and it's really great. But I loved your green grass too, so, you know. I don't know how you did it, but it looked good for a long time, right? So, okay, any other comments, anything? All right, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, folks. Good luck. All right, moving on, 5C. We're going to pass that for the moment. That's on Design Guidebook. So that takes us to informational items. 6, A, conditional use permit 25133 for 804 Pass or Girl Way. And again, this is just for informational purposes. Do we know when that is being, first off, which board is that going in front of? The board of,
Good afternoon.
hey, sorry, Mr. Martinez, go ahead.
Mayor, board members, Gil Martinez. This item is going to be going to the City Commission on December 9th.
Okay,
That would be for a conditional use permit.
yes.
So this is an informational item. It is 804 Passagrilla Way, a conditional use permit case 25133. The applicant is Michael Keller for John D. Dashel of 804 Passagrilla Way, LLC. The request is a conditional use permit for outdoor dining deck and third story of 3-story restaurant development. Here's an image of proposed structure. Some details about the structure, the restaurant itself. It's the first floor is actually the second floor, which is elevated. It's going to consist of about 521 square feet of kitchen space, 28 indoor seats, 24 outdoor seats. The second floor, i.e. the third story, would be of 58 indoor seats and 32 outdoor seats. No live or amplified outdoor music is proposed, and operation hours are between 11 and 10 p.m. The next step The request will go to proceed to the City Commission on December 9th. If the request is approved, the applicant will move on to administrative site plan permitting and building permitting. I do not believe the applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have, but I'll try my best.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Martinez?
Not offhand. It just seems like a lot of place for a small lot.
Yeah, I'd looked at this before when they did a technical review on it, so I'd looked at the plans before. I would just comment that, it's how that area is zoned. And, I'm not anti-building by any means. I think they've done a good job on the design, that it fits into the architectural aesthetic there in the CRD. I don't have any criticisms or anything along that line. And, so in that regard, I appreciate bringing the information to us, and it obviously can go on to the City Commission next week. Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you, Mr. Martinez. All right, we have 6B, Board of Adjustment case. This is for informational purposes. Board of Adjustment case number 25142 for 702 Pass Girl Way. Mr. Berry?
And for this item, we do have the applicant and their representation present on Zoom on the screen. So this is for 702 Pass-A-Girl Way. It's a variance case. This item had previously been shared with the board over the summer. This is a variance case associated with the site plan. It is not the site plan itself. The applicant is Brandon Tecklenburg of 702 Pag Way, LLC. This is an unnecessary and undue hardship variance. This would be to retain an existing curb cut along Pass-A-Girl Way following redevelopment of the property. That is subject to Land Development Code Section 40.11. It was determined that because this lot does contain alley access, that would be west-east alley that accesses the site. I'll show that location in a moment. They do need, post-redevelopment, a variance to retain their curb cut. So this is a zoom-in of the survey. This is showing the 702 Pagway property. There is an existing curb cut at the front of the property. It is 17 feet in width. At the rear of the property is a 10-foot alley per the plat. It is still in existence there. There are some encumbrances within the alley, but it does still exist. It is still a public alleyway. There was formerly a north-south alleyway that was vacated several years ago. You can see here, this is a zoom in of the site plan showing the lowest level. This is showing the existing drive there in red. It is 17 feet in width. The proposed drive will be 20 feet in width at the property line, and that is the request they are making there to retain this drive post-development. So next steps, this request will proceed to the Technical Review Committee on January 7th. It will go on to the Board of Adjustment on January 28th. The application has been deemed complete for Board of Adjustment review. The site plan for this development is currently under review. It was taken over the summer. It is pending currently the outcome of this case, to my knowledge. The applicant may proceed with the development after the variance decision is rendered. So if the variance is denied, because of the options that they have with parking, they would be able to move forward just without the parking present or with access being provided solely from the alleyway. They could also propose a different arrangement. We would need to evaluate that at this time, or at that time. But as I said, the site plan is currently pending under review. And we have the applicant as well as a representation present, if you have any questions for them or for myself.
Okay, I have some questions, and I'm looking at the variance narrative that was provided from the applicants. And I know this goes in front of this is for informational purposes only, and this goes in front of the Board of Adjustment and Tech Review. But I want to make sure certain things are presented, or that the city is on notice of certain things, so at those meetings, the information can be provided. And that's this. Just in general, throughout this variance request, they refer to this driveway being present before the 2013 CRD zoning, okay? And it's important that at 2013, this particular property was specifically left out of the CRD. And it was a ROR parcel. Okay? And so it's a little misleading to suggest that, you know, because now they want to build under the CRD, but they want they want the ability to build 17 units, which isn't allowed in the ROR. 6 unit would be. And so I think it's important that we know that this was rezoned at a certain date. I'm not sure when that is. That's a thing I'd like you to find, Mr. Berry. If you look on the zoning map still today, it's zoned ROR. So I know that hasn't been updated. And so I believe, and I'd love to get the history on this if you can, that the only reason that particular lot was rezoned to CRD was to include it or join it with the 2 other lots owned by that owner in the CRD, which face 8th Avenue. And then for the project that was going to be called, I guess, the Holloway Hotel. When that project fell through, well, what I want to find out is, did they go in front of the commission to get it rezoned to CRD? I think they would have had to have done that. And was the reason was so they could join it with other lots in the CRD. And then when the Holloway fell through, then how did this still remain in the CRD when it was not supposed to be in the CRD?
So
and there's a big, they go through this about how it's being deprived the amenities of the other CRD buildings, but they're not. The avenues on 8th Avenue have a small alley behind them. They don't have a 2-way alley. They don't get fire rescue down the alleys. They get fire rescue and emergency services off the street, just like this would if it was in the CRD. And so what I'm concerned about is they have rezoned it to their benefit, but they don't want to follow the code. They want half of the ROR and half of the CRD. And considering that the real reason it was changed to CRD is no longer in existence, I think they have to make a decision. It should have been reverted to ROR because that lot was left out specifically because it's a residential lot at the time. It wasn't a CRD lot. And so, a lot of this stuff kind of rings hollow when they say they are prevents the property from being accessed in a safe and usable manner. It's the same as on the CRD, virtually all those lots have the same thing. They can't get alley access from the back. It's not wide enough for a fire truck or an ambulance. And so, the reason when it was ROR, they had a driveway because it was residence and that made sense. But now that they want to go under the CRD zone, they've changed that zone to their advantage to build an extra big building, but they claim they have a disadvantage because they have to follow the code in the CRD. And so we really need to bring that out because I think, this whole problem that exists with what they want to build there is really because they changed it to a CRD for a reason that doesn't exist anymore. And now the city and the area is getting punished because they want to build a structure that should never been rezoned to that once it was taken away from the idea that was joining 2 properties on the CRD. So I think we need to do some research into that. So, when there's a claim that there's a hardship, the only hardship is created by themselves or the previous owner that had it rezoned. So when they rezoned to CRD, they have to live by the rules of the CRD. So you shouldn't get a variance for something that you've created yourself. Now, as you know, I'm just going to say this, when it's zoned ROR, they can still have, they can build a structure there, but it would have to be an bed and breakfast, and it'd be limited to 6 units. Because at CRD, they have 17 units supposedly, and all the other problems we talked about that building that they want to build. So, I think, we really need to look at this closely as to why they need this variance. And I hope the staff would be able to provide some of that information, because the Board of Adjustments needs to know, how it was that this lot came to be, went from being specifically excluded from the CRD for obvious reasons. That's not like the other properties in the CRD. And then it still remains CRD when it was, their build they wanted to build before was taken away. It should have been reverted back to ROR.
Chair Lowry, that's something that we can look into further, but like you said, one of the criteria that the Board of Adjustment will consider when this comes before them is whether the conditions result from the actions of the applicant or a prior owner of the property, and so at that time, that determination will be made.
I understand that. I want to make sure, because I want to make sure the city is prepared for that information about how the zoning came about, so when the Board of Adjustment maybe asks questions, we already know the history of how that came about. Because the way the application is written, it ignores the rezoning. It's written as if the city did this all themselves. And so that's obviously a very important part. So I just want to make sure that when that comes around, that the city is prepared for that information.
Right. We hear you. I also want to note that it is the applicant's burden to demonstrate by a substantial competent evidence that all the criteria are met, including that, and so that's something that the board will consider.
No, and I understand all that. And I'm just saying, this is for information purposes. I'm throwing it back to some degree that, instead of some speculation as to what happened, we ought to try to find out exactly what was happened at the time.
I do think that the fact that the applicant submitted the video, I don't know if you had a chance to watch that, but I do my drive-bys on the items on the agenda, but I wouldn't have driven by with the tape measure or checked out, what hardship was in the way of the utilization of the rear alleyway, which it's nice having the rear alley. I don't think the applicant was responsible for placing those utility posts and boxes. That's certainly not something that was within their control or that they initiated in any way, creating that additional navigation hardship. The emergency trucks can access from Paso Grow Way. They don't need to come down the alley. So that wasn't really a concern for me as far as emergency access. But if we just kind of put this in the little box that's presented to us as to, can we keep this driveway because the back driveway is really difficult to get through, I would certainly agree on that point. They didn't create the hardship of navigation from the rear driveway with all of those obstacles in the way there. And this, regardless of when or where it was done, it was approved at one time to put this driveway in the front, and now it's become essential for access to the property. The fact of the later use of this property or redevelopment of the property, I think this doesn't have anything to do with that. It will at some point. But if this is just in isolation a request to keep that driveway because the rear access is difficult, then I would certainly be in agreement with that.
All right, well, on that point, I'm going to say this. All those houses, all those along that alley, on the CRD side of that alley, which is, there's 3 structures there, they don't have access. They just have that narrow alley, okay? So they get treated from the front. The neighbor on the north side of 7th Avenue that lives behind them, behind this lot, has parking in the back of their house. So they have to turn around in that alley to exit, okay? 702 could use that alley if they had an area to turn around it, which they have plenty to do that. But they've created a plan. This is like, a plan that says we can't turn around because we want to build this building. So they've created that hardship in the plan that they want to do. Once they knock down that garage at the end of the alley, they could have the biggest turnaround. They could use the whole lot to turn around in if they wanted to. And so, we get a project, and then we try to jam the square peg in a round hole because that's what they want. And it's not my fault that when they looked at the CRD zoning, they didn't recognize or they ignored the mandatory language that they have alley access. The reality is, it should never have been in the CRD because it was specifically left out because of those problems. And if you recall the Holloway Hotel, I believe they didn't use Pass or Grow Away. They used the entrance that exists in the parking lot next to the Tortuga Apartments. So they were even getting rid of that curb cut back then for that plan. And so, you know, I think we have to keep our eye on the ball on what we're supposed to be doing down there. So if you grant the variance, then you go to, now we get to build this building that arguably was intentionally left out, and the whole purpose for rezoning doesn't exist anymore. So anyway, I know that's all something for the Board of Adjustment to figure out, but you know, we need to get the history of that for them. That's all the comments I have.
Brandon, do you recall when we were doing the guidebook, we set a minimum width for alleyways? Was that 10 or 15?
It's 10, so automatically any platted alleyway would be subject to that, but the board can waive any alleyway less than 15 feet, waive the requirement for access from that alley. When it's 15 feet or greater, the board would make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, but 15 to 10, or 10 to 15, the board could approve. So
And this is in some places less than 10. Is that correct?
it's platted at 10, but with the encumbrances, it's less than 10.
Because of a power pole, I think, right, which could be moved. But also, just from the fairness point of view of how they compare this to other pieces of property, if you look at the properties on the north side of 8th Avenue, which are in the CRD, they have a very tiny alley in the back. And that wasn't a necessity. They didn't get a curb cut in the front. And the reason they didn't get a curb cut in the front is because in the CRD, you don't get a curb cut in the front because you're supposed to use the alleys. And so now they're in the CRD and they don't want to use the alley because it doesn't benefit the building they want to build. So, you know, talk about creating your own problems, and we're supposed to solve it for them. I mean, I'm going to just say one more time, it was intentionally left out of the CRD for a reason. And so the maps still show it's on it.
So when the other proposal on the previous development, that included the lot around the corner where Tortuga's pool is now, is that
It
right?
included all Tortuga, the pool, and this lot, 702.
But that would have required the combination of more than 2 lots to create that, and we limited that to, you can't combine 3 lots.
No,
Haven't got-
that was never,
Haven't gotten it
No.
together yet.
it never went through. It never
No, but
went
I
through.
mean, that would have required that, is that right? And now we don't allow the combination of 3 lots or more.
Well, I would point out that at that time, I believe they were either 3 separately platted lots, or it was the 2 lots on 8th Avenue that were together, and this lot
And
was
this one
not
was
part of
separate.
that. And so it was arguably added in for that project that they never went through with, and never had to go through, you know, to make decisions on combining lots or anything like that.
Which, was after the presentation earlier today, where they're adjoining the two, they're going to be adjoining the 2 lots together, but they haven't taken it in front of the board yet because the plans never got really approved, or that not until it's approved. I don't recall that type of vote back at the time that this went from ROR to CRD.
At the time of the Holloway, my understanding was there was, from the city's point of view, there was no reason for any variances, therefore it was going in front of no board.
Right.
And
That's what they had said.
And it never did, because it fell apart before that went that far.
But I'm just curious
So-
that they had already started accumulating that land. That was single-family residence on that land. That's why it wasn't considered part of the CRD. That's why
Right.
they divided it right down the line when they did the CRD.
Yeah. In 2013, when they did the CRD, there was a house there. So anyway, I just, you know, this is going to be obviously a contentious scenario, so I just want to make sure everyone's aware.
I just want to make sure, before we dig our heels in, that it's not a hardship that we created. That's a possibility too. We
Well,
just said alleys have to be this size and now it's not, so we just defined their hardship for them.
Except for the alley wasn't an issue when we created the CRD, because they didn't need an alley access in ROR. Only CRD requires alley access. That ROR does not require alley access, as that property was. So it was fine for them to have a curb cut like they always had, because it was a house. And then they rezoned it to take advantage, I'm going to argue, to take advantage of building a bigger structure with more units. So they had to be CRD, but they don't want to abide by the alley aspect of the CRD because it makes it that they can't build their building. But they asked for the CRD, and so, you know, if this was still ROR, they could build something and they could have their curb cut. But you know, they're creating their own problems and asking us to resolve it so they can build something that really wasn't in the plans. It wasn't the intent of the CRD to put this single lot as a CRD lot, because it doesn't fit the rest of the things. On 8th Avenue, it's all frontal on the street. You don't have curb cuts. On Gulf Boulevard, Gulf Way, between 8th and 9th, there's no curb cuts, because those are all commercial buildings. So this would be the only place in the CRD, I think, that has a curb cut, except for the Seahorse, which, you know, always had that parking lot right there. So that's why one of the reasons it wasn't put in the CRD in the beginning, because it was a residential lot. So, and I'm quite confident that when they got it rezoned, they didn't say, so we could use this individually as a lot to be in the CRD. At least I don't think they did. I wasn't there. So that's why I think we need to find that stuff out. All right, anything else?
No.
Sorry to rag on that, but
Should we ask if the applicant would like to
Sure.
make a new statement?
Don't forget representatives.
Brandon, would you like to ask any questions or make any comments?
hello?
Just one
Yes.
second. We're turning it up. Sorry.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you for everyone being here today. Appreciate it. Listen to what the board had to say. I'm glad these meetings are recorded so we can go back and listen to them later. I've heard the language, they themselves created this mess. So for the record, I bought the property with my partners in June of 2022. Did not create this problem. I was told by the seller's agent, the seller, and my multiple meetings with the city before I purchased this property, that it is commercial. Was not brought up to me about ROR or any of those different things that we just heard. So I didn't create this problem. I'm not they, I'm not themselves. I'm the owner of the property with my two partners. This is what we were told. This is what we were promised. We purchased this property, I believe, for $3.9 million. If I knew that I would be here 2.5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have bought the property. I should not be going through all of this right now, but here we are. So let's be proactive and positive. The property with the alley and multiple spots in the back is 9 feet wide. I've just heard where my next door neighbor on the alley has a driveway and she can go in and out. She has to have very small vehicles. For example, fact, after Hurricane Helene, there was a vehicle in my garage on the north side. It had water probably 4 feet up. We had to get a tow truck to go back in the alley to get the car out. There was a problem. The tow truck could not go back in the alley. It could only go to pretty much behind Shadrack's. I'm here today so we can approve over the next several meetings the driveway that has been in place on Pastor Grill Way for many decades. The driveway itself was cement. It was paved in 2010, permitted and approved by the city. When I was going through a lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings to purchase the property, at no time did anybody ever tell me that if I purchased this property and wanted to build on the property, that the alley would become the primary drive, I guess you could say, of going to and from. And there's no way cars can go to and from this property. The width, it's not wide enough. And I've spoken to the residents on one side, on 7th. I've talked to the owners on 8th Avenue of these buildings, and they don't want vehicles going up and down that little alleyway. So I just want us to be all on the same page and be factual. I was very upset with the July meeting because and we can all go back to it if you like, multiple false statements by the board about the build. I've been very quiet. I am trying to be positive, professional, and I just want what was promised to us when we purchased it, and that's pretty much it. So I will leave it at that. I appreciate you all for being here, and feel free to ask any questions that you may have.
Okay, Mr. Tecklenburg, and first off, I appreciate where you're at, your position, and wanting to move forward and being cooperative and stuff. I really do. And so I want you to understand when I use the terms they or them, I'm not referring to you specifically. What I'm referring to is if you look at the paperwork that has to be filled out, question 2 says the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, which would be you, or a prior owner of the property. So I know you didn't get it rezoned. I know it was rezoned before you bought it. But that still is a relevant part, is what were the actions of the prior owner. So I'm not trying to talk about you individually. I'm talking about the property itself and the necessary the prerequisites that need to be set to get a variance. So that's where that comes from. You know, as far as talking about the width of the alley and things of that nature, yes, the alley is a problem, okay? And that's why this property was never in the CRD. That's why it was ROR. And that's why you had a curb cut on that property, because it was ROR. So that's my whole point on this stuff. The other places, your neighbors along that alley, they don't have a curb cut because the CRD doesn't provide for curb cuts. That's because it's for the buildings that were along 8th Avenue. Your piece of property was not. Now, you might have gotten bad information from people, and it sounds like you probably did. And I just want you to know that, you know, the point I'm making has nothing to personally to do. It has to do with the zoning and the changing of the zoning and the requirements of the zoning. So that's my comment on that. So, you know, as we go forward, I'm not anti, or I don't think the board, let me speak for myself, this board is anti-development. But it has to be done in a responsible fashion that fits into the area. So as we move forward, you know, I hope we can talk about this stuff. I don't want to have hard feelings about it by any means, but I also have an obligation to follow what the ordinances are. So, you know, I just say that to you so you maybe get a better feel for the position that I'm taking on some of this stuff. I understand how you don't want to accept it or understand it, that's fine, but just letting you know. So, if you have any questions for me or the board, we have those too, but, I can't say anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am wanting to work with the city to get the Paso Grow Way driveway as the primary access to the property. And that's why we're here today. So for whatever we have to do to forward this conversation to the next meeting or right now, that's the intent of today's meeting, is that we want to have the driveway on Paso Grow Way as a primary driveway.
And I just want to note again, procedurally, for any public that may be watching, this is just an informational item, and so the main decisions will be made at the Technical Review Committee meeting on January 7th, 2026, and the Board of Adjustment meeting on January 28th, 2026. This meeting, though, is just for informational purposes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Tecklenburg?
I am good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on then to information item 6C, which is the building permit for new residential construction at 2707 Paso Grow Way.
So the board sees most designs, most new homes through the design review process, but this is one that has been significantly modified since it originally came to this board back in 2023. This is the property of 2707 Paso Grow Way, the former Bush estate. Same building permit, they have come in for a significant revision. It is a new single-family residence of what is now approximately 4,000 square feet, was previously 23,000 square feet. This is built to the RU2 zoning district, so this is the underlying zoning district, not to the overlay, so we will not come back to this board for design review. You can see the layout of the property here. It has extensive accessory features on the lot, as the previous development had. You can see the pools and the other accessory improvements toward the center of the lot. What is in red there, and you'll be able to see this better from the elevations, that is the actual deck with residence inset. There is a storage and a parking area on the west side, or sorry, on the north side, 28th Avenue side. And then there are some features underneath the deck in the residence, but the majority of the ground level will be storage, and they will be putting up a screening feature on the west side to meet the screening requirements of the overlay, which applies even to those properties that are in the underlying zoning district. This is a view of the living level. There's only one living level in this case. In the previous design, there had been two. You can see in red that is inclusive of a deck that runs around the perimeter of the enclosed space. The interior contains the actual single residential level. They have a great room offset by a single-family residence. And then you can see the elevations looking from the east, so the backside looking from the dock area, and then from the west looking from the street. That's on the bottom of the screen. Just a reminder, this was the 2023 plans. It was a much larger, much more extensive design. The current residence is about the size of the guest wing of the residence, which would have been on the 27th Avenue side of the property. At the time, that was a 3-level structure. It was connected by an enclosed breezeway from the primary part of the residence over to the guest residence on the south side. This is now just a single residence, no breezeway between any other portions of the building. So the revision has been conditionally approved pending a revised elevation. As I mentioned before, they have resubmitted plans showing that the Paso Grow Way side is adequately screened, providing that 80% plus opacity, but we have not received a revised elevation, so we have asked for that. The subject development does meet the RU2 setback standards, and it meets the lot size for the RU2, of course, so it is not otherwise subject to design review. I pointed this out in the staff report. I just wanted to mention that going back to the site plan, and I believe the landscaping plan was in the agenda as well. They are using quite a bit of Florida native landscaping, a lot of, beach, dune-friendly landscaping in their design. We don't always see that with new residences. It's not required, but I feel that they've done a very good job at designing for native Florida-friendly landscaping. So I just wanted to point that out. Happy to take any comments from the board. As I mentioned, this has been conditionally approved. It's just pending that revised elevation.
Anyone? My comments would be, I think it's fabulous that they're, the change is great. I know that they must have a change in how they want to use this, which is great. So, no, thanks for the information. I knew that it's been a couple of years, I think, since they actually did the other house proposal, and so, this is great.
Thanks.
Nice mid-century design and scale. Very pretty.
I think it'll be a nice addition to the area.
And I really like the landscape aspect. That's good, because there's going to be plenty of land escape on that.
There will.
So, okay, appreciate that. Okay, so next, I guess we would go to 6D, the report on the Gulf Beaches Museum.
Very quick update from the museum. Again, ongoing work in the garden every Monday morning at 9 o'clock if anyone wants to join. And this coming Sunday at sunset, we'll be having the Light the Museum. Rain or shine, we'll figure it out. So love for everybody to come out and support the museum. Refreshments will be served undercover, perhaps. So, thank you.
Okay. 6E, city-owned resources. Ms. Coleman?
Yes, just to provide an update, the city staff is headed to the city commission next Monday, or Tuesday, I'm sorry, for direction on Mary Pier and also Pasquarel Park with the house relocation. So we'll have another update for you in February, or not February, January. Getting my months mixed up. With regards to the next steps on that. I'm sure you'll hear before then, but officially from us as staff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I would say, because we've been here for 55 minutes, we have a few moments here that we at least can talk briefly about discussion item 5C, if that's okay. And this, let's see what I have on that. I was just kind of proofreading some of this, and I would just point out, especially in the beginning, which some of the stuff that I authored, we have the PAG, and that was done just for brevity, in a rough draft. So it asks that all the capital PAG just be changed to the Pasquarel word. And there's probably, I think, did you say you counted 11 of them?
18 in the introduction alone. 18 pegs. They feel like a lot of pronouns.
So I think when we finally do it, we should, just call that Pasquarel. That was my intent. I was just trying to be quicker on that. Also, in the third paragraph, there's a quotation mark at the beginning of recreational beach, but there's no quotation mark after recreational beach. That's where I think it should be.
I think introduction too, before we get too far back, the introduction says potential residents. I think we need to strike that because there are current residents with historic homes. There are residents who are making alterations, or new residents doing alterations or rebuilds. So I think potential residents, and maybe not even residents, because some of them are business owners but don't reside here.
Yeah, I agree. Let's take out potential residents and just say, welcome to the Pasquarel Historic
Yes,
District.
perfect.
Yeah, very good. Anything else? I mean, and I know that this isn't the final, but obviously we're going to, in the meantime, we can do something here.
Well, I loved having a draft to look at. Thanks for working
Yes.
on that. It's really
Yes.
nice.
Thank you. And then I know since last time we talked, the yellowed portions obviously have been added, which is fine. I probably need to look at them a bit closer, but I would also point out that on, let's see, where are we here? page 5, we added the Mediterranean Revival, which we talked about before, right? Which is fine. But then on page 6, near the bottom, where we have other styles, we have Mediterranean Revival. I mean, no big deal. I'm just saying that we need to take that out. And that's really the only thing that was obvious. I just wanted to point out. And this last page that's all added, that's pretty much, or last 2 pages really, under the heading of additions to an elevation of historic buildings. That's pretty much just taken right out of the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, right?
With some other, we have a few local best practices in our code. It's all drawn out of that, yes. And there's a few items just over time that I believe the board has shown preference for, just how additions are constructed. They are generally in line with the Secretary of the Interior, but they give a little bit more detail specific to our jurisdiction.
Okay, and so this, anything else from other members? So, again, this is basically our, what are we calling this here? Our,
Introduction.
yes, introduction, right. And so, I know we've been busy doing a lot of other stuff, so maybe someone can tell me, when we actually starts getting put together as, I'm going to use this word booklet or whatever, you know, I know it's going to be added on to potentially added on to the ordinances in the LDC, but when we add photographs and things of that nature, are we planning on putting those within these, like the heritage architectural styles and existing promoted construction, that will be where we'll add those kind of photographs and stuff?
Correct. Just add the photos and then have comments on what the board prefers in those.
And so also when we talk about photographs of current new builds that are good, or additions, or elevations, things that we'll put those in those particular sections. I guess I'm asking how as a matter of practicality, who's laying that out, and how are we doing that, you know, to prepare this kind of, adding the photographs and the descriptions to it?
Well, I've received...
If you haven't planned for that yet.
I've received quite a few photos. We're hoping to bring it back in January. I just wanted to present the content, but we will have a draft.
So photo stuff, we're going to get a draft of that later in January.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. All right. Anything else? Anybody? I think that wraps us up until our next meeting. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all. Adjourned.
January 8th.